Well, it's 1 o'clock. I want to say welcome to everyone. You're in session 1A as an Apple Foster Blessings. And in this workshop, we're going to hear from Angela Paganelli, who is the founder of Foster Blessings. It's a meal ministry based out of the Evangelical Free Church in Clinton Corners, New York. Before we begin, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Catherine Doyle-Bunker. I am a family support specialist out of the Hudson Valley. I see you, Michelle. I understand how hard it is to be sick and be at a presentation, and I give you a lot of credit for being here. Um, I'll be your moderator at today's Zoom. I just want to remind everyone that training certificates are available for the conference. In order to have a training certificate, though, you need to have the name that you would like to have imprinted on the certificate as your name in the Zoom meeting. So if anybody needs to take a minute quick and put in their name or their last name, I'd be happy to give you that minute or so to do that. We've also put in links in the chat. So you have two links. One is for our book table fundraiser. We're working with a wonderful organization that is helping to ship out books that are related to topics for the conference. And the other is our conference evaluation. Just tell us how we did. We'd really love to hear from you. We're going to ask that if you have any chat, could you put it into the chat box? Unless Angela specifically invites people to unmic so that we can keep some of the noise down to a minimum. And other than that, we're really excited to have you. Welcome to the first workshop of the conference. We're going to have a lovely weekend with each other. At that note, I'm going to turn it over to my friend and co-worker and the founder of Foster Blessings, Angela Paganelli. Take it away, Angela.
Okay, awesome. So I have a quick video that I just want to share. I'm actually working off of my daughter's laptop, and it is very unfamiliar. And I had everything set up, but of course, now that I'm on a different platform. Okay, here we go. So hello, as Katie said, I am Angela Paganelli, and I am the founder of Foster Blessings, which was started in 2019, May. We have our 3-year anniversary coming up, actually. And obviously, before the pandemic changing several things, not too much though. But yes, we are out of Evangelical Free Church in Clinton Corners. We have many foster families in our church, and so lots of support. So I did want to start with, I don't know if anybody has asked themselves in their foster care, guardianship, or adoption journey, whose idea was this? Why are we doing this again? You know, on those incredibly hard days when you're in court or, you know, something drastic changes. I know sometimes it's very easy to get lost in the day-to-day things that happen. So I set up a sort of a reminder, if you will. My kids love this game. It's called 2 Truths and a Lie. And so I have set up here. Let's see. Okay, 2 Truths and a Lie, Foster Blessings edition. So the idea behind this is that there's going to be 2 very bold, true statements that you have to figure out which one is not the true statement. So let's start. Okay, so foster youth are 7 times more likely to battle depression than non-foster youth. 1 out of every 5 aged out foster youth are homeless, and only 1% of children will enter foster care sometime before their 18th birthday. Which one sounds off, if you will?
The last one.
You got it. It is actually 6% of children that will enter foster care before their 18th birthday. That is 6 out of 100 kids in your schools, in your families, communities, sports teams. 6 out of 100 of them will somehow be impacted by the foster care system. Next one. Only 51% of foster children graduate from high school. Less than 4% of foster youth will obtain a bachelor's degree by age 26, and 18% of children in foster care are returned to their birth families.
Well, I hope it's the last one.
It's the last one. It is 51% of children in foster care are returned to their birth families, which is why it is very important to not only be advocates for the kids, but of the whole family as a whole. The average age of children in care is 2.5 years old. Female foster youth are 10 times more likely to commit a crime than their peers. 184,000 households in the US have a foster youth in them.
The last one.
It's actually the first one. The median age of kids in care is 8.5 years old, which kind of dispels the myth of infants and the troubled teens being the majority of kids in care. And all of this can be found at iFoster. And the last one, 95% of foster youth have steady employment at age 24. Former foster youth are twice as likely as a veteran to have PTSD, and 4 out of 10 former foster youth never find stable housing. Number one, half of foster youth have steady employment at age 24. And when we think that there are 20,000 children who age out of the foster care system annually, that's a lot of people. It's a lot. So just to kind of remind us what we're fighting for, what we're doing, why we're doing it, that was a fun reminder, if you will. And so if at any time during this, if you have a comment, if you have a wait a minute, oh my gosh, me too kind of moment, feel free to raise your hand and share, because my journey is not your journey and vice versa. And we're in this together. And there have been people who, I may be talking about something, they stop me and say, wait a minute, here is a great outlook on this. Here is a great way to see this. And it has changed my perspective. And so I think that's what we're all here to do, is to help each other face tomorrow, face the next day, and get through the majority of everything that is going on in our lives. I am going to start with a story. I got a text last week, and it was from a new foster mom. And her question was, is it appropriate to send a card to the birth mother on Mother's Day? And first I said, yay, we're starting a support group in June. You should probably be there, because that's not a question you can just ask your best friend. You can't ask just some person that's in your life. You are, it's the new phrase, if you know, you know. And so I said, sure, it's appropriate. Not only that, we have sent handmade cards, handmade pot holders. Thanksgiving, we send a giant Thanksgiving meal for the whole family, which, at sometimes was just a little jar of turkey baby food for the kid, and the parents got all the fixins. But it's all about fostering that relationship with the child and the parent while they're in care, and also fostering that relationship between you and the birth parent. Because if there is an adoption, there's a good chance that you might have continued relationship with that parent. And so that is exactly the kind of thing that we just can't ask the regular Joe on the street. We have to be able to talk to each other. So I'm going to share a little bit of my story. And like I said, if at any point you say, wait a minute, hold on, that's I went through that and kind of moment, I would love to hear what you have to say. So I was born in Miami, Florida, Dade County, and I was 2 months early. I was under 2 pounds, which in 1979, really small chance of survival. And I was in the newspaper as Miracle Baby, right? Miracle Baby survives, but they didn't have clothes for me. And so in my baby book is a sock. They cut off the top of an adult sock and they put me into the sock. And that was how I spent the first couple of days of my life in the incubator. And about 2 years later, my mother kidnapped me from my father. We got onto a train. She permed my hair and cut my hair, lengthened my name to Angelina, which when I finally got my birth certificate, I was a little bit taken aback when it said Angela. And my sister went through a similar situation. And the question always came up, where is my dad? And her answer would be, I'll tell you when you're older. I was never older. I never got to the appropriate age that she felt I should be to share why she so abruptly left. And I did find out later, much later, that my father did look for me. He just, in those times, there was just no internet. There was no, cell phones. It was just, I was gone and there was nothing he could do about it. She also homeschooled me for kindergarten and first grade, which now looking back, obviously, I see why, because she was scared that he would find me. But in that time, we lived with my grandmother in Amish country, and it was like the best childhood because we were barefoot and there were chickens and Amish people. And I mean, it was just, we had like this swing that we would just fly down 90 miles an hour down, definitely dangerous, like really, really dangerous. But it just made my childhood so beautiful with cousins and people everywhere that were just so supportive and loving. And Friday night pizza nights with my Italian grandmother, you just can't beat that. You just can't. And so about 7 years old, and my family in New York told my mom about this great guy, and they started talking. And funny enough, it was letter writing. It really wasn't a lot of like phone conversations. It was just a lot of letter writing. And so after, I don't know, maybe a year, they decided they were going to get married. And my 7-year-old self got picked up from my beautiful Pennsylvania and plopped into New York, which is a very different place than Pennsylvania. It was a neighborhood. It was definitely not lots of land. And my mother became pregnant right away, right after their marriage. During the labor and delivery, she went into congestive heart failure and passed away several times, and they kept reviving her. But because of that, she went into a slew of very, very, very serious medical issues. She had her leg amputated. She was very ill, in and out of the hospital. And so I became mom to my little sister. Now, part of me wonders, where was CPS? Because, and I'm aging myself, I owned one pair of pants, and they were MC Hammer envelope pants. They were white with black leaves. They were very distinct, and I wore them every single day when I went to school, which was on and off, very much on and off. But I have to wonder, like, where was CPS during this time when it was very obvious to those around me that I was struggling? But I became mom to my little sister. So at 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, I was potty training. I was doing laundry. I was cooking. Really, the only two things I knew how to cook was egg salad and Franks and beans. And I cannot eat them today. cannot stomach that. But so yeah, I took on the role of mom, which later on I'll talk about became kind of complicated in our everyday lives, as you can imagine. But one thing that kept happening was we were transitioning a lot from shelters to hotels, a lot of hotels. A couple times we slept on the beach, we slept in our car. There was a lot of mental illness. And so that was carrying over into our everyday lives. And I didn't realize it at the time. I was just having kind of a good time, right? I was like, loving going to the beach, staying at hotels, all that kind of stuff. I did, the secret thoughts that you have. I did have a relief when we were at a shelter because the responsibility was off my shoulders. I did not have to worry about where a meal was coming from or if my sister was protected. I just was being a kid when we were at these shelters. But of course, like I said, secret thoughts, because what sane person wants to live in a shelter, right? Doesn't make sense. And so we were at one particular night, we were at this shelter. And one thing that I will say about my mother is that she was not a tired person. I will sleep when I'm dead was her normal response, right? Not tired. She detested people who laid down during the day. Like it was just a thing. So imagine we're at this shelter and she's sleeping during the day. And of course, my childhood that was kind of tumultuous already was gearing up for something big. And I'll never forget, she came around the corner and just said, I'm going to go to the doctor's. I'll be back. And my sister and I were watching TV and I turned around, I just looked and I thought, well, that's weird, right? That's weird. Well, a couple hours later, my aunt and uncle showed up at the shelter, and watching them walk up the walkway, your mind realizes something's wrong. They don't belong here. This doesn't make sense, right? They don't know about this shelter. They don't know what's going on. Why are they here? And the pit in my chest just knew this is not going to be good. So it turned out that my mother had had a stroke on the way to the doctor's office, had crashed her car and was in a coma. I can't remember if it was medically induced, but it was definitely a coma. And so my sister and I went to go live with these normal people. And when I say normal, it was the word that I then chased after for until really well into my adult life. The first night, we heard words like bedtime, and we heard words like lights out. I cannot watch the first couple of minutes of Frozen without having a nervous breakdown. Like it's bad. I was not warned going into the movie, and I had to leave the theater because I was sobbing. So that first night, my aunt walks in, she says, okay, it's time for bed. We don't do bedtime. Okay, well, we're going to have lights out. Well, we don't sleep in the dark, and we definitely don't, like, the TV's got to be on. There's got to be some kind of stimulation going on. We don't just lay in the dark and go to sleep. That's not something that happens in our everyday lives. So as we're getting ready, I leaned over to my sister and I said, sleep on my wall. And so that night, we both slept on an adjoining wall, probably not exact, but we got the idea that we were sleeping next to each other. And that was as close as we were going to be able to get that night. And so when we think about foster kids, guardianship kids, those first nights, the smells were different. The feel of the sheets was different. It's like sleeping in a hotel. That's kind of what I liken it to, is nobody sleeps well in a hotel, right? You just hear everything and it's hot and it's cold and you don't know what you're doing. That's what that first night was like. It was unfamiliar. So next day rolls around and my sister asks, can I go to the park with some friends? And I felt myself, without even realizing I was doing it, step in between my aunt and my sister. And I said, wait a minute, you asked me. I'm in charge of you here. They're just babysitting. I'm the one you ask. And it caused a bit of contention. And, my amazing aunt and uncle were not informed of anything. They just pretty much received a trauma-filled, undisciplined, terrified child, and they did not know what to do with it, which is why I am so grateful for this coalition, for all the people that are a part of this. And so I did well in school. I have to say, I started thriving, because I had a bedtime. That may have had something to do with it. But I started thriving, and we had an amazing couple of weeks there. What do they call it? The honeymoon period, right? But there was one class that I just could not wrap my brain around, and that was history. And I kept saying, what does some guy 200 years ago know about what I'm going through today? I wasn't interested. I didn't care. And I failed a giant test. As he plopped the test down onto my desk, I got an attitude. My face obviously became sour. And in front of the entire class, he said, just because your mother's dying doesn't give you the right to fail this class. And the room became very small. And I just remember picking up my bag and just walking out of the classroom, going into the bathroom, becoming very ill. That not only had that never been verbalized to me, but now I had an entire class of children that were going to pity me. And that was not okay. And so having this just kind of thrown in my face, and now seeing the demographic, or the way that the kids treated me a little bit different, right? I was kind of held at arm's length. Instead of being welcomed into the fold for who I was now the kid with the dying parent. And it started to change my view on school, on my peers, and I started to not care. Schools need to be educated on trauma. This is crucial. Now, do I think that teachers are going to that length? Absolutely not. But any comment can send a kid spiraling. And so we have to be very careful about the words that we use, the way that we use them, especially around a group of children. That taught me a whole lot about the power of one phrase and how it can send somebody completely off. So I started doing drugs, sneaking out, doing all the teenagery things of somebody who was going through what I was going through. And I was put on pins. Nobody supervised me. I'm not entirely sure what pins was supposed to be, the person in need of supervision, but I didn't have anybody supervising me. And quite honestly, when I cut class, they put me into when you're kicked out of school. Can't think of the word. Anyway, detention kind of thing, or ISS. But all my friends were there. And so that was kind of a win-win for me. There was no derogatory anything that was going to stop me from doing the fun things and the harmful things that I was doing to myself, because I just didn't really want to exist at that point. So one night, my aunt and uncle, they went line dancing every year, or every week, I'm sorry, on Fridays. And so that was my free time, right? I got to hang out on the porch. I would do drugs. I would, it was just my time to kind of get away from them and their overbearing eyes. And one Friday they came home early, and I thought, oh man. So, run in my bed, pretend I'm asleep. And I hear my aunt open the door. She says, oh, okay, we'll tell him in the morning. And I didn't really think much of it. I thought maybe, something was going on with the weather and school was canceled. It didn't sound dire. It just sounded like, I don't know, we'll tell them in the morning. So the next morning I woke up and it was natural light and there was no alarm. I thought, well, I guess we're not going to school today. As I walked out of my bedroom, my sister followed me. I walked to the kitchen. My uncle was making breakfast, didn't turn around and say anything. And I just kind of turned and I saw my aunt's face. And it's one of those moments that you just never forget. She had been crying all night, you could tell. And she just looked at me and shook her head. And I knew right then. But my sister was digging in the fridge. And all I could think was, in this moment, she doesn't know. She doesn't feel what I'm feeling. I need this to last forever. I need her to not turn around. I need her to not know what I know right now. And of course she did. She got her juice box or whatever she was getting, and she turned around, and my aunt said the words, your mom has passed away. And she was 5, and I don't think she fully grasped it. There was no tears. She just kind of stood there. And I knew why my uncle hadn't acknowledged that I was in the room, because he had just lost his sister and he was about to tell her children that she was gone. So of course he was in a really bad place at that moment, even though he's probably one of the strongest men I've ever met in my life. But then the anxiety started right in that moment, and I couldn't breathe, and then I could breathe, and then I couldn't breathe, and then I could breathe. And the room was spinning, and I was laying on my bed, and I was crying, and I have no idea how long I was there. I have no idea. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. It was just surreal. And so I have said many, many times that most people think that the funeral is the hard part, that getting up to the funeral, the picking out of the clothes and the casket and all. No, that's where we have help and support. We have casseroles, we have cards, we have people hugging us and saying, oh, you okay? The hard part is a week later when you have to go someplace that you've been with them, or you have to go and a memory pops up. And so I liken this to foster care, that the kid's day of removal might not be the hardest. It might come a week later when they walk into a store that they were just with their parents in. Or, you buy a new laundry detergent and it happens to be the same kind that their parent used, and it triggers that. So that first day, there's people, right? There's people in and out, CPS workers, you got your caseworker, there's people. But the next day, the day after, that's when it gets hard. That's when it starts to get real. And that's when I think a lot of people need more support than even that first day, as far as the children, at least. So got into more and more trouble. And I actually have let's see. And this part I would love for people to jump in here, because this to me speaks volumes about how we view the kids that come into care, that we're adopting, that we have guardianship over. Because one thing I can say is that my aunt and uncle did not wake up that morning knowing they were going to have 2 children. They woke up, they read the paper, they did lots of stuff, but they did not know that they were going to have 2 children. And they did not know that their 2 children were going to be experiencing what we're going to talk about. So this wonderful new phrase, if you know, you know. Everybody can see this, right? This is okay.
I'm sorry, Angela, I don't think we can see any. If you're
We
putting
can't see
anything up, I don't
anything,
think we can see anything.
Oh. Okay, let me X that out and see why not.
Angela, while you're doing your technical stuff, I just want to remind anybody that if they want to have a training certificate, the link for that training certificate is in the chat. And please just have your name that you'd like to appear on the training certificate on the screen with you now.
Okay, that's better, right? Yeah, it looked weird. I couldn't figure out why it didn't have my screen sharing green thing. Okay, awesome. So the question, if you know, you know, right? Just like, the woman who asked about sending a card with her new foster child, or, even just in our history, having a child with neonatal abstinence syndrome, being born addicted to everything you can imagine. You don't know things like the children in the NICU who have been abandoned do not have clothes. You don't think about that, but the parents are supposed to provide the clothing for the child, and there is no parent. So I think foster care and adoption and guardianship brings a whole lot of this. If you know, you know, because sometimes you just don't. So the first point, think back to the most frightened you have ever been. And what did that revolve around? So this is getting to the root of trauma. This is getting to the root of what was that initial thing that made your heart race, that made you, like I said, the room spin or something like that. Like I said, if anybody has anything they want to share, jump in, because I love to hear all the feedback. And then think about the fight or flight response that your body felt. Did you run or did you stay and endure it? Living or speaking from lived experience, we choose one of the options much higher than the other. And I call this tendency, right? What is our tendency to do? Because it's a split moment. It's something that we do without really even recognizing that we're doing it. And what is your child's tendency? How can you wrap around them in safety to get them to the other side? So for me, I am a flyer. I run. That's my MO. If I'm in a situation that's making me super uncomfortable, I get out of it. I am not a fighter when it comes to that kind of thing. And one of the ways that I did that as a teen was I would get an attitude and leave the room. The attitude gave me the avenue to leave the room. I was permitting myself to leave because I was angry, rather than staying and doing the hard work and having the conversations. Let's see, next slide. And in that frightened state, were you aware or unaware of your surroundings? Which is an important note, because if you are unaware of your surroundings, a lot of times we're unaware of our feelings. We're just kind of surviving in that moment. And so if you find you're aware of the surroundings, you're going to be able to make a much more effective choice of fight or flight if you can get to that place. And speaking as a high-risk flyer, I just need to remove myself from the situation. That is how I feel it will be resolved the most effectively. And then think about your own tendency. How would you want people in your world to react in your moment of fear or correction or confrontation? Because those are the three big moments that we tend to try to get away from, right? We don't like any of those things. And look for signs that your child is choosing. Like I said, an attitude might be the escape route that they need to go fly. Or, if they're standing in a very defensive position, they might be ready to fight. And so you have to kind of read into that and say, okay, hold on a minute. I see that you want to remove yourself from this situation, or I see that you see this situation as combative. What can we do to remove that feeling? Do we need to lower our voices? Do we need to have kinder tones? What needs to happen that this person feels they need to either get away from me or fight me? And so that is living with my aunt and uncle. He was a retired New York City police detective. I did not get away with anything. He knew everything. Somehow, even when I was not with the man, he knew what I was doing. And so I was constantly in that fight or flight place, because I felt like he was going to judge me. He was going to correct me, punish me. There was going to be something there that I needed to get away from. And so, like I said, agape and the coalition, yes, love it. My next, as I was getting arrested and stealing cars, breaking into homes, all that wonderful stuff, I was placed into what I now know it was a therapeutic home. And I walked in, very timid, nervous, right? And this woman, who was quite a bit taller than me, got into my face. She said, "This is yours. This living room, it's yours. The fridge, don't even ask, just eat. Bathroom, towels are in there, let me show you." And she just made me feel at home. And every night we would sit on the couch after dinner and we would have these great conversations where she just got into my world. She would cry over my situations and my stories. She just surrounded herself with me. And it was really the first time that I realized somebody was getting outside of themselves and trying to get into my world. Everybody had kind of my whole life just, okay, let's do the next thing. Let's do the next thing. But this was somebody who was stopping and being intentional about having me open up. And so as I sat there and I told her this, story, which a lot of people are like, for real, it was therapeutic. And they even did things like they did 1-800-US search to try to find my biological father. It didn't work out, unfortunately. But they were actively doing things that were opening me up. And I was only there, I want to say maybe 2-3 weeks. If I passed them on the street today, I don't think that I would know who they are. But it changed the way that I saw foster care. It changed the way that I saw people, really. And so from there, I ended up going to a home for troubled teens, and that kicked my butt. And that got me to a place where I could live. That's the word I use. I was able to live, and I stopped chasing the idea of normalcy. And I was able to really just be who I was meant to be. And so I met my ex, now husband, there. And very soon after we left there, we got married. Super young, fun couple, right? Got to get married, love each other so much. And about 4 months after my daughter was born, he came home one day and he said, "I'm leaving." And I said, "What?" And he said, "I have been with lots and lots of women over the last year and however months, and I'm leaving you for my current girlfriend." What? Like, there's just nothing. There's nothing to prepare you. And had he said, "I'm leaving because I don't like you," I could have been okay with that. But I had to sit for the next who knows how long with the idea that he was now with somebody else, which is grueling. It is absolutely grueling. And not to mention, he left when rent was due. He took our car. We had no money. I was a stay-at-home mom. And so several weeks later, he needed his clothes. So he swung by in his brand new Mustang and said, "Want to go for a ride?" I said, "Sure." So I got myself in the car, put my daughter in the car. And he said, "Listen, I don't know if this relationship's going to work out. Do you want to wait for me?" That was the final nail in the coffin. I said, "Okay, we're done. Thank you. Have a nice day." And never looked back on him. Looking back, there was lots of abuse that I just kind of mulled over. And then I met my current husband, Rick, who has a record, but I was not about to judge him because I had one too. And so he was he had a job, he had changed his life, everything was great. But my ex-husband found out about him and he called CPS. And I had Rachel at my job because I was able to bring her. And into the parking lot pulled a white car and 2 police officers. And they took my daughter and they put her into the white car. And I had no control over it whatsoever. It was a pretty serious allegation that he made that I was essentially going to kill her and myself. I think it was a shock and awe kind of thing to get them there immediately. But they took her and there was literally nothing I could do. She went to stay with his mother, which I was grateful for because we still had a great relationship and I was able to see her. And eventually CPS closed the case and it was completely unfounded, obviously. But that feeling of hopelessness of you're going to take my child and I can't stop you. You're going to take her and I'm not going to see her tonight. She's not going to see me tonight. It was heavy, even though she was in a place that I knew she was safe. I knew she was loved and I was probably going to see her tomorrow. It was heavy to have that lack of control over my life and her life. And so not only that, I had vowed that my children were not going to have the same life that I had. And here she is in a CPS car being put into foster care. And it was hard. And I was angry because of the lack of control, essentially. So time went on. Eventually I did get my divorce and married Rick 2 weeks later. And he is awesome. He's like the best husband ever. But moving on from there, Rick and I have children, and I really felt the pull of foster care at my heart. I really felt like I was supposed to be doing foster care. I go to Rick. Sure. He said, New York State won't give me a gun, but I don't know, maybe they'll give me children. I don't know. We'll have to see. So we went through the whole MAP class, and they did approve him, which he was like, oh, okay. Obviously he was, showed them his record and whatever, but they had no issue with it because it had been previous and there was nothing incredibly violent or whatever. And so what had started this was a woman came up to me in my church, not knowing any of my history. She said, I had a dream that you had a little baby boy. Now, she did not know that we were struggling with infertility. She had no idea. And I was kind of like, oh, that was not right of you to say to me when you don't know me. And I don't know, weeks later, we're kind of Googling, oh, let's look into foster care. And her name pops up because she's the home finder for our county. So I called her and I was like, you handle foster care? She, yeah. We've been talking about this. Oh, okay. Gets us the information. We go through MAP class. When you go through MAP class as, a traditional person, it took a lot on my husband. Like it weighed on his heart. A lot of the things he was learning, that kind of thing. But going through it as a previous foster child brings up a lot. I sent my sister a lot of texts mid-class, I love you so much kind of thing, can't believe we went through this. And so at the end of the MAP class, it was incredibly emotional. It was a very emotional day. And I think it was like a day later, I was at co-op with my friend and we both got a call at the same time to get our first kids, same time. And as I pulled in to the children's home, which I'm going to stop for 1 minute right there because we live in America and America likes nice. America does not like messy. And so when we think of places like the children's home, or we hear the word orphan, we definitely go to third world countries. That's where our brain goes. We don't think orphan is on our son's baseball team or in my daughter's art class. We just don't think like that, right? We tend to, like I said, pretty them up with names like the children's home. And we just drive by them every day, not realizing that these children are being raised by staff members, not families. They're in an institution. And I can only imagine, I did actually want to do some research on this, and I'm very sad I didn't. During the pandemic, if the staff members were allowed to hug or like have contact with the kids, especially the littler ones, how much contact was even allowed. I can't even imagine, the trauma that's there from just lack of touch and affection. Anyway, so just wanted to point out that there are orphans. There are children who have been freed for adoption living in America. And it's a weird concept to think about because we're so wealthy and we're so put together, and but they do exist here. So we have our first little guy, and all is going well. Got a couple more kids. And for some reason, we were called a lot. We've had over 20 foster children, and we've adopted 4. But one little girl, we got a call about 5 o'clock at night, and she wasn't going to be at our house till about midnight, but she was being removed and was being taken to the emergency room. And so 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, she comes in. She's not crying anymore, but she's like that, right? And so keep the lights low, bathe her, see the diaper rash goes from her knees to her chest, right? And she was so distraught that I just sat in the living room chair with her and just kind of rubbed her head and hummed until she went to sleep. Next morning, we wake up, we have lots of windows, and the light is shining through onto her beautiful long blonde hair, and I see bugs, lots and lots and lots of bugs. So as carefully as I can, I pick her up and I put her on a stool, give her a lollipop, right? Trying to not like freak out myself, checking myself. And I call her pediatrician because this is now a Saturday and, my caseworker is not going to be available till Monday, although we had the on-call. And the pediatrician told me she had had it 6 times. It was lice. She had it 6 times that year and she was immune to all medication. So we spent the next 2 weeks nitpicking. This is where it comes from. Nitpicking, pulling what ended up being just a lot of dead carcasses out of her hair, each strand. And so, as you can imagine, not only having this child who needed a lot of attention, a lot of physical attention, she needed to be held a lot, but also having to spend hours every day working on her hair, you can imagine that it was very stressful. It was a very stressful 2 weeks. And a friend of ours brought over dinner. And I was like, hey, that's kind of a good idea because the church is excellent when children or when typical families are having children, right? There's meal trains, there's baby showers, there is all this wonderful stuff that is coming out of this family having a child. And this family has had 9 months, 8, 7, whatever months to prepare. This foster family had maybe a couple of hours to ready themselves, their families, their homes, finding beds, moving beds, whatever it is, spending hours getting ready to take in this child or children that are going to come to their doorstep with a whole lot of hurt. And so I said, wait a minute, if we are going to be supporting biological families, how much more so should we be doing so for foster families? And so this meal idea just came up. And I said, what does everybody think? And our elder board loved the idea. And so we had our first cooking night, May 18th of 2019. And the next day we got a call from a grandmother. And she had taken in 3 grandchildren and she was just having a really hard time getting her beds where they needed to be and things like that. So because it was the first delivery, I went with a friend of mine, and the support that we were able to offer her was, one, we helped her fill out her fingerprint form because, it was an online form and she was really struggling to do it. 2, we were able to help her move beds, right? But on top of that, we brought dinner. So she didn't have to think about dinner for 3 days, which, to a grandmother with grandchildren, that's a lot of time, especially 3 grandchildren. And so that's where Foster Blessings was born, was out of this little girl who had a traumatic experience, and she is actually adopted, and I am very good friends with her adoptive family. We got to bring her to her adoptive family, which was even cooler. And so we're going to talk about these first 3 days. And what does it look like? Now, the Italian in me, we used to do homemade meals. We don't do homemade meals anymore because of COVID. Trying to get back there, wanting to get back there. But of course, everything is different. So now this is what we use. Okay, let's see. This is what a typical delivery looks like. The first night we have pizza delivered. And the reason that we have pizza delivered is because my beautiful aunt and uncle, one of the first nights that we were there, served salmon and spinach, which is a favorite of mine now. But you can imagine my 13-year-old and 5-year-old sister, like we thought we were going to starve to death there. So we love to have the familiar, and every kid loves pizza, right? Or if they have allergies, we order something else off the menu. But we have pizza delivered that first night with paper plates. They're not going to worry about dinner. Then this picture shows what the delivery looks like. This is 2 more meals, depending on the size of the family, that go right into the oven and get thrown away when you're done. That is completely disposable. The Zatarans and the Stofers are completely disposable, as are the paper plates. The diapers and wipes Those go to whoever needs them. And we do have a myriad of types of diapers and types of wipes, sensitive and the whole nine. To the right, you'll see those are what we call treasure boxes. And each design is designed for a age group. So you can see the one on the bottom says 5 to 10. The one in the middle is for a teenager girl, and the one on the top is for a 2 to 4-year-old boy. And those are filled by the community. And those not only give the kids a place to keep things that they may have brought with them, and they just want this to be their spot, their box, right? But it's also got really great things in there, like coloring books, crayons. The older girls have journals and pens, and there's just all kinds of, squishimals and all those Beanie Babies, things like that in there for them to enjoy. And then we also include in the middle is a folder with an encouragement letter, just saying, hey, you know what, we're here for you. Because also what is a part of Foster Blessings is our adoption parties. And that is when a family adopts in our county, we have a special church service just for them. They come, they bring their family, their friends. We have a huge decorated cake, coffee, donuts after church. We give them a little gift in our church, just praise for their particular family, letting them know that, you know what, your adoption last week was awesome, but you're not done. Yep, the workers are gone, but you are just starting a whole new journey that you need to have a lot of support for. And so that letter also contains that. Okay, and so how does this all work? Well, let me see. Let's see. If anybody ever, Canva is amazing. I'm like a walking commercial for them. They are just absolutely amazing. Okay, so this is how it works. This is a timeline for a Foster Blessings delivery. We have a landline that is, it's actually at our house. We tried cell phones, but we have horrible service where we are. So that didn't work. But we are contacted usually by somebody from DCFS. Lately, we have had a lot of people through Facebook moderators telling people to contact us or tagging us in a post. That's been a lot of our ones lately. But we are contacted either through the phone, through social media, or through email, or even from the foster family themselves. And then whoever's in charge of the phone, the supervisor of the phone, takes the order. Now that means that they find out how many pizzas, we do 1 topping per pizza, diaper sizes, meal types, any allergies, things like that. Then the supervisor contacts the closest delivery team. We have 2 churches that we work with right now because our county is huge. And so we have ours, which is more in the northern section, and we have another church, which is more in the southern section, both fully stocked at all times to make any delivery. And so the supervisor contacts the closest delivery team through text. And then when 2 people have responded, the text switches over to those 2 people so that it's not a crowd of text coming into all the phones. And all of the details are given about the delivery time and where to be. Then the delivery is completed by 2 team members. The delivery team then reports back to the supervisor on how the delivery went. And we follow up sometimes with a phone call, a lot of times email, just saying, okay, if you need anything else, that kind of thing. But that is how we run a typical delivery. We also have a pickup option where if you don't want people parading all through your house, you can definitely drive by our church and we'll have the delivery all set and ready for you, which is what we did during the pandemic. Actually, we had it outside on a picnic table for them. Just get back here. Okay, awesome. So any questions so far? Nope. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the next piece here, and that is 2 things. The support group that we have that we're going to be starting. This is, Dutchess. We are in Dutchess County. And we're in Dutchess County, but because we are so, we're just kind of close to the other counties. So Putnam, Ulster. We've been in Ulster, Greene County, technically Dutchess though, but we expand. So the other part that came out of this was that we love church. And our son is 5 and he's on the spectrum. And so, no problem. And so he was in the nursery, and because of his lack of impulse, scratched a child. And we realized that a very, very good portion of kids in the foster care system, coming out of the foster care system, do have some kind of atypical neurological thing going on, whether it be ADD, ADHD, even autism. Like there's just lots of different avenues, right? And so we said, wait a minute, he loves church, but there's no way that he is going to sit for 45 minutes like in a traditional classroom, right? And there's no way I'm going to give the child scissors. No. Okay. So maybe not even a glue stick, right? We just don't know what's going to happen. And so my husband and I sat down and we said, what are we going to do? So we alternated, right? He went to church. I went to church. But Justin wasn't going to church. And Justin would say, we love church. We want to go to church too. And so we said, okay, we're going to take you to church, but we're going to do it a little bit different. And so we started All In, and that is a special needs children's ministry geared towards children who cannot sit in the traditional classroom. And so we have a gym. And so in this gym, we play basketball for 5 minutes. And then after that, we do a lesson for a couple of minutes. And then the floor is lava. And then we go back to the lesson. Then we're memorizing a verse, but during that verse, we're playing basketball. And so we're constantly moving and it's constantly changing, but it's a set schedule. So there's no surprises. There's not going to be a meltdown. Everything is going to be fine. And so it also allows parents who have these children to be in a church where they feel like, okay, you know what? I don't have to wonder if my son has scissors right now. And our pastor got up the first Sunday we did this, and he said, I just want everyone to know, we're going to have some people here. They might disrupt the service. They might have headphones on. They might be under a blanket. That's going to be okay. Stay in your lane and just do your own thing. Let the parents handle it. They got it. And I just sat there and cried because I realized that, yes, this is exactly what we're missing. We had children leave our church because they couldn't sit. And of course, if you know, and I didn't, I would think, well, they can sit, they're fine. Just, give them something to do. I didn't know. And so creating this allowed us to have a time where parents can sit and relax and just not worry about what is going on. And it has just been, it's been phenomenal. It's been phenomenal for Justin. It's been phenomenal for us, to have this amazing way for people to attend church. And so Foster Blessings, we are now expanding into other states. We are going into Ohio in the next near future. We're working on it. So if you are part of a church that wants to, bless the foster families not in your church, because that's the number one question we get asked. Do you only serve people in the church? No. If the phone rings, we go. That's it. Bottom line. I'm sorry. I think I saw a question. Did I see a question, Katie?
You have a question. Please add info for All In and Foster Blessings in the chat if possible.
Okay, yep. I actually have a POPL code that I'm going to show you in a couple minutes that will send you to our Instagram, to our Facebook, email, phone number, all of it in one QR code. Which little plug-in for this POPL, POPL. I have a bracelet that I use when I do speaking events, and the people just scan their phone, and all of our information goes into their phone. It's $20. That's it. Great little device. So that's what you'll have at the end. I have what's called a POPL code. It's a QR code that you can scan. And so, yes, I will send information because the one great thing that Foster Blessings has been able to do is it gives a voice That is my biggest takeaway from all of this, is that it gives a voice to not only foster kids, because as we're in the homes, our teammates are playing with the kids. They're on the floor with the kids. Grandma might be wiping the counter, foster mom might be making a phone call, but it is giving us a voice to say, hey, we're here for you, right? We're a church and we're here for you. And this is what we're going to do to support you. We have all of these different avenues, which, by the way, Foster Blessings for Widows coming soon. So we have all of these different avenues that we work with that will, DCFS, we work very closely with them. And I'm sorry, I can't read the things that are popping up for some reason. Oh, there it goes. Okay. I did see it. I don't see it any longer.
The statement was that the author is very sorry for your childhood and is so thankful for your willingness to share and help others, and is suggesting that perhaps you should write a book, your ups, downs, successes, and not so successfuls. You could title it The 8-Year-Old Mother, or if you know, the story of an 8-year-old mom. I have a sister daughter and a sister mom, but does not nearly meet your story.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you. I'm actually in the middle of writing a book. It is bringing up a lot. I thank you for that. That is, and the reason that I'm writing it is because as we're growing and as things are getting bigger, I want people to know the origin, that this is not about the stuff. This is not about the pizza. This is not about the treasure boxes. This is about support. And this is about me being in foster care with my aunt and uncle, and they had no clue. They just had no idea. I want to be there for all of them. I want to be able to say, hey, I was there. I get it. And let's work on this, right? And let's get some tools into your parenting that is going to strengthen how you speak to them, how you interact with them, because of that combative fight or flight. I can tell them, like, listen, what you just said right there, that probably put them off more than it pulled them in. And so here's a better way to say that, right? Or if somebody calls and says, my child is really struggling in school. Okay, they might not be interested. Is there a way to maybe change some of their electives? Like, is there a way to, obviously got to keep the core stuff, but changing my elective at one point really helped me because it was something I was interested in and it spurred me on in the other areas. So there's lots of different things that you can encourage foster parents and guardianship parents, so many different avenues. And that's what Foster Blessings does. That's our job, is to, bring the stuff. That's our job. But also, hey, we're here for you. We're going to pray for you. We love you. And we're going to do the best we can, right? All together. And so, yes, thank you for that. Because, and actually the title is just going to be Foster Blessings because that's what it's all about, right? And all in, we don't have a lot of information about that as of yet because it's new. And we didn't want a huge influx of people. I mean, if you want to come to our church, great, we'll have you. But, didn't want to advertise it so much as to just say, let's be aware. One of the biggest things that as of late that All In has been a part of was Saturday Night Live did a skit called Winter Formal on a neurodiverse child who actually ended up having fetal alcohol syndrome. We don't know that till the end of the skit. And the parents are kind of making fun of this kid because they're selling him for prom and, oh, don't worry about him. He's not, he doesn't know anything. He's got soiled pants. He's got crumbs on his face. And the whole time the kid's going, please don't videotape that. Please don't. He's embarrassed. And so together with another organization we work with, Foster, FASD Hope, we kind of called them out a little bit and was like, that's not okay. We can't just be running around making fun of people. That's not, if everybody in the room is not laughing, it's not okay. And so that's one thing that All In has been able to kind of do is stand up. In our particular county, we have an organization, I don't know if it's an organization, but it's called Think Differently. Think Differently campaign. It's a campaign. And just even last night, we took my son to our local baseball field. And because of this Think Differently campaign, we had our suite all to our own, which was free. And it was a room filled with sensory items. So he could stay in the room and play with the sensory items, go out and watch baseball with his headphones that he loves. Then when he got overwhelmed, come back into the room with the sensory items and regulate himself. And so we happen to live in a great county for that. We just, it's amazing the stuff that's available to us that really isn't elsewhere in the country, unfortunately. Getting there, I think, but yeah, so that's the big thing is that Foster Blessings gives such a voice. And the idea is that, if we calculated all of the time that we spend prepping, cooking, and cleaning in an afternoon for dinner, it's a lot, right? I would spend at least an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Everybody takes 3 minutes to eat, but the rest of it takes all the time, and I don't have a dishwasher. So the idea that, you don't have to worry about that is just that much more time that child can bond. They can be hugged, rocked, read to, all of that stuff just instilled into that child. So, but yeah, so if you are a church and you want to start your own Foster Blessings, if you go to our, oh, you know what? Let me share the QR code. Let's see. If you knew me, you would be so shocked that I'm able to do all of this. It has been a fun couple days learning all of this. Okay, so if you have a phone, you just scan that QR code and it will take you right to what is called our Popple page. And that has our Instagram, email. There's a commercial on there for our new support group, which, by the way, is not just here. It's a support group for anybody that wants to join in. We will be posting on the Instagram soon about it, when it's going to be, and then we'll post that day so that everybody has a chance to jump on if they want. Just trying to see what else is on that Popple page. And if anybody has a problem getting on, so you can just go to Foster_Blessings, which I can just probably put in the chat too. Let me see.
The code said, gave you the option to put it in your browser.
Yep, that's what I'm doing. Foster. See. That is our Instagram page. That's what we use the most, is the Instagram page. So if you have a problem with the QR code, just jump on there and then I can send you the QR code personally, because I'm not entirely sure how it works on a computer, but it worked on my phone. I was able to scan it and get on. So yeah, so and I think I saw a question about Westchester.
There was a hope that that the Foster Blessings program could be brought to Westchester.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, if you know a church in Westchester that wants to open one, I will gladly give them our information. And basically what we do is we have a package. It includes the logo, all of our paperwork. They would have to start their own social media. We don't do social media. Jerry, we do. So thank you. Using that code, you would go to, what is it? E-giving or Linktree. I don't know. I have two different. Let me see. Yes, Linktree. That's where, on the Popple site. And oh, thank you too for the QR code being in the event comments. Awesome. That's perfect. So yeah, so what was I saying? I got sidetracked. Long Island, yeah. Like I said, I mean, anywhere. It can be anywhere. If you want to grab somebody from a church and be like, hey, the only thing that's really needed is somebody that has a close tie to family services, because that's really where you're going to get, like, you're going to go to the MAP classes, you speak at the guardianship dinners, that kind of thing, go to the picnics and all the things that the state offers, kind of make yourself known. That's the only thing that's absolutely needed, is somebody that has that connection to DCFS or Family Services. So other than that, it's very self-run.
And you had the connection because you were a foster parent, or how did you have a connection?
Yep. So we were a very well-known foster family. We, like I said, took in 20 kids in like a couple of years. And so when I first presented this to Family Services, they were like, yeah, yeah, we'll definitely support you because, you know, and a lot of the people on our delivery team are foster parents or have been in some way, like our pastor actually took the classes, but he has cancer right now, so he can't take children, but almost all of them have some kind of connection to guardianship or adoption or foster care. So just the idea of being able to say, hey, who's your judge? You know, that's to me like one of the top questions, because the judge makes all the difference sometimes, right? Or knowing the terms, you know, TPR and, you know, all the terms that come with it. And you're like, what does that even mean? You know, so.
Angela, thank you so much. I just wanted to take 2 seconds to remind everyone that there are links in our chat. One, if you would like a training certificate, 2, a fantastic link to our book table, and 3, a link to our evaluation, because of course we want to hear how we're doing on the conference. Thank you so much, Angela, for being with us and for everything that you do. And thank you to everyone who was here for the presentation. I hope you have a wonderful time at the conference this week.
Thank you, Katie, and everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you.